back on. Okay, so I was not always a believer. I think the belief that you can be born into something and grow up with, a passion and a strong belief in that is false. Because I grew up in a very Christian home, and I was scum of the earth, like really, really like that. And I'm not talking about Christian standards. I'm talking about like by bad standards, I was bad. But I still have like a concept of God. Like, yeah, there must be something. There must be some higher purpose. There must be some reason for all of this. And so that's put me on a search. And so a lot of the arguments that I'm going to be sharing with you is a lot of what I found out were really good evidences for a belief in the Judeo-Christian God, other than Krishna, Vishnu, and a plethora of others. So let me just jump in. So for me, the teleological argument is a really good one, and that is teleological. Yes, thank you. That is essentially the argument we design, that we can see intelligence in structures in nature, and we can understand them. So for you to be able to look at a coded piece of information and be able to decode that information, that in itself requires intelligence. Information is immaterial. You cannot weigh information. Its value is, it's not tangible. So there is really no way that nature can act upon that. So it's something that it's at a higher level of abstraction than simply physics can deal with. So for me, I see in nature clear signs of design, of intelligence, the world pointing towards a supreme designer. Design, for me, directly implies a designer. In Darwin's time, when he was proposing his theory of the origin of species, microbiology was a fledgling science. They did not understand the complexity inside a common bacteria, which is, and in Darwin's time, he even said that the complexity of the eye itself was a huge challenge for him because of the design, how something can come about by random, unguided processes, while at the same time killing off things that did not work. The information contained in DNA is extremely dense, having up to 7 layers of information in one sequence of code. So you can take one strand of DNA, and there could be 7 different messages encoded in that one piece of information. And when that information is manipulated or changed in some way, the system has to be designed in such a way that when one piece of information is changed in one of the interpretations, it doesn't break all of the interpretations. So it has to be extremely sophisticated and tuned. So for designing self-repairing, self-correcting, self-replicating, self-modifying systems, and I'm a CS major, and part of what people do in artificial intelligence is try to replicate that, and in introspecting programming languages and things like that, which essentially is what DNA is. That is extremely difficult to do. It's not something that you can just bang your hands on the keyboard for a billion years and it's going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And the next argument, which is very similar to that, is the cosmological argument. It's essentially this: things exist and they don't have to exist. Therefore, we conclude that something caused those things. So nothing brings itself into existence. Nothing causes itself. So there is obviously an abundance of stuff in our universe, and it has to come from somewhere. Someone caused it. It didn't have to be, but there it is. Ultimately, if you go back far enough, including if you're a secularist, if you believe in evolution and the Big Bang, you go back to that infinitesimal point, right? And some say that there was no point. Some say there was nothing. Nothing exploded and created everything. That's what they're saying nowadays. So you go back to a supreme, uncaused will that created everything. So something, for example, the Big Bang, you would say, something caused that explosion. You can't say that nothing caused it, because that would be nothing bringing everything into existence, and that's just, I mean, the statement in itself is illogical. So, causes for all things, the supreme cause for all things is self-existent, and we call that supreme cause, that ultimate cause, God, and it has no parent cause. It is self-existent. The Greek philosophers call it the immovable mover, the one who caused the initial motion. And yeah, so there are things that exist in the universe. Something had to cause those things to be. That's essentially the argument. And thirdly, the argument for morality, the moral argument. There is a universal concept of right and wrong across the board. It doesn't matter whether you are American or Japanese or wherever you come from. You could live in an Amazonian tribe. You know, stealing is stealing, right? You know, if your neighbor has 2 coconuts and you want a coconut and you steal a coconut, you stole a coconut, right? But for some reason, we human beings see that as wrong. Why would that be wrong? I need a coconut, he has 2. I can just take one, right? What's wrong with that? But we, something about that, we know that we shouldn't be doing that. So what is that thing? So we believe that there's a universal concept of right and wrong, and the fact that we can even discern between whether something is right or wrong strongly implies the existence of this law we all subscribe to. If there is a law, then by necessity there is a lawgiver. Somebody is giving this standard. And we know that it can't be ourselves. Why can't it be ourselves? Why can't we be that moral authority that is giving that standard? And it's simply because of this. Because you want that coconut. Now, if you were the lawgiver, wouldn't you write the law so that you could take that coconut with impunity? It doesn't make sense for you to be creating laws which ultimately go against your own natural desires. So it doesn't make sense. Conversely, if there is no God, then there is no moral objectiveness, and therefore morality is circumstantial. But we know that to be false. Stealing is wrong no matter whether you live in a first world country or in the Amazon. And not because we innately don't want to steal, but the exact opposite. In many situations, why do you steal things? It's because you want it. We don't steal. Not because we don't want to, but because we are adhering to the laws of a higher intelligence, which we believe that we're going to be held accountable to. So with those 3 arguments, I feel like at the very least I've created a foundation for a belief in maybe a deity, not specifically the Judeo-Christian God. So we're going to go into that now. So for me, what really did it for me was archaeology. Because if you can't prove to me that the things that happen in the Bible really happened, then that are, it's just let's just stop talking, right? Because if you go back to the book, and the book is saying things that do not reflect reality, then the conversation is dead. So secular scholars during the period after the French Revolution, they were starting to be very, very vocal about their criticisms of the Bible, and they would say things like, those stories were allegorical. The stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, the stories about the kings of Israel, these people never existed, these places never existed. In fact, these things did not even happen.
For many years, centuries, the names Nebuchadnezzar, Jehu, Abraham, these kind of names existed solely in the Bible. The Bible was the sole resource for these historical figures. And that's why they were believed to be simply myths, mythological. But with the recent advances of archaeology, we have found that all these people actually exist in the places where the Bible says they lived. So that's something that we need to understand. Tablets have been found that mention Zoar, Sodom, and various other nations mentioned only in the Bible up until recent times. And you have to understand that archaeology as a science, it has really only existed since about the 1800s, since about the French occupation of Egypt with Napoleon. So it's very recent. So we have archaeological finds like the Cyrus cylinder, tablets where King Nebuchadnezzar himself is speaking. We had chiseled reliefs of the king of Israel, Jehu, bowing down in submission to King Shalmaneser III of Assyria, which is also, that's another story written in, I believe it's written in 2 Kings and in 2 Chronicles. So as archaeology advances and digs deeper and deeper into our past, we're finding that it's vindicating these stories of the Old Testament. We don't even have to get into the New Testament because there's so many scholarly sources and historical sources, secular and Christian, about Jesus that's a conversation that we need not even waste time having. Doubting the existence of Christ or the so-called mythological Christ is something that we need not even address. So I'll just move on to the next point. Now, after I found out that, okay, there's something about these Old Testament writings, there's something about this book that is different from other spiritual religious books, right? Because, I've heard a lot of atheist friends of mine say, you guys are atheists, but we're atheists like you, but we go one God further. Yeah. So why? What's the difference? Right? Because God's an atheist, right? He doesn't believe in other gods. So how do you know that this is the Judeo-Christian God is God? And for me, what really does it, actually God himself in the Bible, he puts forward a test, and he says, show what is to come, so that we may know that you are gods. And that test is prophecy. So you would assume that an all-knowing, omniscient God would be able to tell the future. And if he didn't indeed have prophets, right, that would come and give his message to people, that he would say something that would happen before it happened, and then it happens. So I'm not going to go into too many prophecies, but I just want to mention one. In the book of Isaiah, and because of archaeology, we know when Isaiah lived. Isaiah lived before the Babylonian captivity happened in Israel, around 700 BC. He prophesied many things, and most of the messages he received from God were admonitions for the Jewish nation who had apostatized and gone after worshiping another deity. They would have bouts where they would worship Yahweh, and then they would worship Baal, and they would worship Ashtoreth, and they would go up and down on this roller coaster. And so Isaiah was admonishing them about returning to their Lord, to Yahweh. And he gave them a prophecy about how the Messiah was to be born. And the prophecy was fulfilled to the letter. And you'll find plenty of prophecies in the Old Testament pointing towards that. And some with specific dates and incredible accuracy, like the book of Daniel. And Isaiah was sawn in half by his own people for his prophecies. And lastly, I think for me, I put this one last because for me this is the greatest evidence for Christianity. It's the transforming and redemptive power of Christianity. I told you guys that I was not always a Christian. when I came to Christianity, when I understood the gospel, when it really like sunk and I really got it, I changed completely. You see, you can't treat your fellow man selfishly when you understand that Jesus paid the ultimate price for him. I'm not going to steal from you or do anything bad to you if I know that you are of infinite value to God. You see, once you understand that Jesus would have rather died for you than live forever in heaven without you, you look at the world in a completely different light. You won't mistreat anyone. You won't hate anyone. You won't lie. And of course, for those so-called Christians that do, there's a name for that. But for me, the strongest evidence for Christianity is the fact that people who go through true heart conversion are totally different from who they were. Christianity makes claims about what those who accept Christ and walk in his steps will experience, and it delivers on those claims. Jesus meets you where you are and elevates you to a nobler state, revealing to you who you really are, not a byproduct of chaos, but a creation made in the image of the most intelligent and perfect being in the universe. And when you understand that, you behave differently, and you treat your fellow man differently. When you understand that God himself took on flesh so that he could feel our pain and agonies, paying the price for all humanity, your behavior will reflect that. The Bible says that God is love, and those that say they know God and hate their fellow man are liars. The message of Christianity is one of redemption and transformation, and it is the only religion that can deliver a true answer to the problems we face individually and as a race, as the human family. So that for me, that was the best argument, and that's why I'm a Christian today. So that's what I think. Just want to hop right into it?
Does God exist? Maybe. Yeah. That'll settle 2,000 years.
Could you just like briefly update me on what happened before
Oh,
so far?
Sure. Basically, we're giving a 10-minute presentation on the reasons for Christianity, and now I'm going to attempt a rebuttal that is a case for atheism if such a thing could be made.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
that's it.
All right.
Excellent. So maybe God exists. I define myself as an agnostic atheist, which means I don't claim to know if he exists or not. To me, it doesn't seem like there's enough evidence to know either way. So far, maybe such evidence will present itself, but as I see it, I don't think there's enough to say. Some atheists are much stronger than I and say that, yeah, there's definitely not a God, and I respect that. I just can't go that far yet. But from my point of view, anthropocentric as it may be, it doesn't look like the universe I see is congruent with the personal creator. Because at the heart of it, why would God, the supposed creator of the entire universe, be particularly concerned with what a certain species of ape does while naked? That ape being us, which I'm a fan. Like I said, that might be true. I can't disprove it. I don't have evidence against that. But at the same time, it just doesn't seem very likely to me. It's worth mentioning that I didn't always think like this. I was raised in a devout Lutheran home, and I took 6 years of Bible study, read the Bible cover to cover, performed in all the church plays. I wore a button to school on election day that said, "Vote for Jesus." I was, I was a Jesus freak. I drank the Kool-Aid. That was me. All that to say, I remember how it felt right that I was doing what God wanted me to do, and I sincerely believed that was what I needed to be doing. Even if people made fun of me, damn it, I was going to do it because God. I understand it. That touches on what is, in my opinion, one of the biggest benefits of Christianity, and that is what it does inside you. Not necessarily like the efficacy of prayer. We can have another debate on that for a different time, but what it does for you, how it makes you feel. I remember asking God for things, and I would feel better after asking him. Not to say that things were better, but I felt better. And that's half the battle. I mean, if we really look at it. So I can respect that, and I understand that Christianity probably does give you profound meaning in your lives, and I respect that. I often disagree with my fellow non-believers in that I think that maybe we do have some inherent need to believe in something. Maybe it helped early societies bond together more strongly, but across nearly every culture, as you mentioned, we find some form of religious belief. And while the names and numbers of gods may change, the patterns look awfully similar. Too similar, in my opinion. No one knows for sure, but maybe it was man who created gods and not the other way around. 600 years before the birth of Christ, the Greek philosopher Xenophanes understood this perspective. He said, "The Ethiopians make their gods black and snub-nosed. The Thracians say theirs have blue eyes and red hair. Yes, and if oxen and horses had hands and could paint with their hands, horses would paint the forms of gods like horses, and oxen like oxen." So what do we do if God doesn't exist? If you'll entertain that perspective momentarily. As frightening as that may be, we do good. We don't do good for a hope of a reward or something that we're going to get at a theme park in the sky at a later date, but we do good for the sake of good itself, because that is its own reward. I don't need a parent to tell me that that is the right thing to do for me to want to do it. I don't have to believe in God to understand that. If there's one myth that I would like to break apart, it's that people need gods to be good, which is false, and that is a dangerous perspective. In fact, some of the best people I know are not religious. Katie, for example, has donated enough blood to save over 50 people, which I think is kind of cool. I'm guessing from your shirt that you do not believe in God. Okay, excellent. Her dog donated blood yesterday. I didn't even know you could do that. Yeah, her dog donated blood yesterday. I'm guessing he doesn't believe in God either.
I don't think so.
I don't think he thinks much either. Yeah.
So dog exists.
Dog exists. Yes, exactly. Going back to the topic of the discussion, I don't think I can make a case for atheism. Humanism, perhaps, helping humans for the sake of helping humans, I believe very strongly in that. We might be able to make a case for that, but atheism, maybe not. We're starting from the null hypothesis. We don't have any arguments for or against it. I would like to reserve judgment until I have better data. So it's not really anything to defend. It's just a lack of belief, or at least that's my interpretation of it. The book of Genesis tells us that humans were made from dust, and I agree with that. Stardust, to be a little more precise, but dust nonetheless. The Bible begins with the story of creation, but science tells us another story, and I think it is equally, if not more, inspiring. We have looked out into the cosmos and seen clouds floating between the stars that are made from the same kinds of molecules that we are. That gives me goosebumps. But we can take it further. During the formation of our solar system, it's likely that comets full of this organic slush bombarded the Earth. After a few 100 million years, this primordial soup began reacting more vigorously, and interesting things started happening. Sort of like how crystals arrange themselves in self-replicating patterns. Some of these organic molecules started copying themselves. And that is how life began. Not in an instant, but over eons of gradual change, it turned into something that we might consider alive. Maybe. Evolution is just a theory, after all. But after billions of years, a lot like snowflakes spontaneously forming shapes. Maybe one of the shapes that carbon makes is you and me. That's exciting to think about. We see our ingredients in space, and with the methods of science, we can trace it from the Big Bang to you. If we want to feel important and connected as religion makes us feel, we are. We are profoundly connected in ways untold by the scriptures. The atoms in your body were forged in the crucibles of long-dead suns. They accreted on the molten earth and eventually grew into you. Right now, you are the universe thinking about itself. I think that's really cool. Every time I think about it, I get inspired and worked up. Like, I love it. I believe that we are just apes. Bigger brains and less hair than our chimpanzee and bonobo brethren, but we are apes nonetheless. But we are apes that can do math and science and space travel, and that is really cool, especially for a species that we took our first steps 3 million years ago, and we left footprints on the moon 50 years ago. It's inspiring to think about. In many ways, science is the closest thing that we muggles have to magic. With the methods of science, we vanquish the impossible. We eradicate intractable diseases, read the language of life, land on comets and find our building blocks within them. With science, we can look up at the night sky and see not just pretty lights, but we can read the story of the universe, our story. How, after nearly 14 billion years of never-ending change, the cosmos became us. It woke up, became alive and aware, and now it's having a meeting talking about itself. Darwin wrote in his notebook, "Man, in his arrogance, thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity. More humble, and I believe truer, to consider him created from animals." So does God exist? Maybe. I'm not certain. There are mysteries out there for sure, but I would prefer to investigate them fully with the fewest presuppositions. I will reserve judgment until better data or better theories present themselves, because with utmost respect, a 3,500-year-old book written by wandering desert nomads does not cut it for me anymore. It used to, and I remember it feeling good, but it doesn't cut it for me anymore. As such, I will live my life and explore its mysteries as if there is no God. To me, I think that is the most fulfilling and humble way to live. Thank you.
All right. Questions?
Yeah. So thank you, Ricky and Michael, for presenting. What we're going to do now is, like I said, if you're here tonight, all of that from both perspectives probably wasn't anything new to you. If there was something new to you, feel free to point it out. So what we're going to do now is, like I said, we're going to try to blur the line between us here tonight. So I'm going to start out by asking the two questions that I asked you before, and I'm going to start out and answer. It's up to you guys if we want to go just like around the circle, or if you just want to jump back and forth between people. It doesn't really matter to me. Thank you. What do y'all think? Do you want to go around?
Monkey will work.
Yeah,
Monkey.
I think the monkey will work.
I imagine that once we start talking, we're going to probably start bouncing off each other's subjects. So I want to start off by asking the first question to myself, which is, what is the biggest doubt that you have about your own perspective? And I will say this, that when Ricky mentioned his final point about the redemptive work of Christianity, I have to say this is where some of my doubt stems from, because I was I was raised in a Christian home by Christian parents who were raised in Christian homes by Christian parents who were raised by Christian parents who were raised by Christians. And so I never really had a moment where I never really had a chance to doubt what I was being taught constantly at church, or what my parents were telling me, and the things that they were teaching me. And so when it did finally come down to it, as I just kind of grew up into Christianity, eventually I had to start asking questions on my own. And I started having my own doubts. And the fact that I didn't have that redemptive work just immediately hit me, like I didn't have a 180 salvation experience. It's something that I've had to contend with my whole life ever since, which I feel, I guess you can say I feel blessed to have that problem. But I can say that I've had many different kinds of doubts over the years. I've had, let's see, the first one that really hit me kind of at the beginning of high school was really the science perspective. Like, we have this religious book, and it says things about the world, and some of it seems non-scientific, so what do you do with that? What do you do with the fact that God stopped the sun for Joshua? What do you do? Because it seems like, if the earth actually stopped spinning, or much less if the earth stopped moving around the sun, it seems like something catastrophic would have happened, right? So, and honestly, I still don't have an answer to that question. I still don't. I think that there are things that overshadow it in my mind, and in my heart, personally. So, those were kind of the first initial doubts I had to contend with. As I grew older, when I started college, something that really started bugging me a lot too was the resurrection of Jesus. And so I had to, for the first time, really dig into the historical evidence for the resurrection, which of course begins with the historical evidence for Jesus, period. And by the way, I am giving a presentation on that later this semester. Anybody's welcome to come. So those were doubts that I had to wrestle with. And I feel like I did finally get over those. But where I am today, and what I'm doing now, and what I feel like I'm having to contend with most in terms of doubt is the issue of happiness. Is that if God really is all benevolent, and I will say that this doubt is more of a I feel a relationship issue between me and God. If God really is omnibenevolent, if he really does want the best for us, if he really does want us to enjoy him and enjoy the world that he created for us to live in and enjoy the people around us, then why does it seem that there are so many things that just break my heart over and over? Now, logically, I have answers to that. I can give you theological answers to that fit in a Christian worldview, and that's perfectly okay. But from a functionality standpoint, as I'm walking through my life, these things hit me, and they hit me hard. And they're things that I have to deal with daily, and to rediscover that joy. And I find that certainly the wonder of the world, the wonder of, like just today, I looked up at the sky, it was a pretty sensational sunset, and I thought to myself, that is truly beautiful, and that gives me joy. And these things keep me holding on to God, for sure. So those are the kinds of doubts that I have, and I'm sure there are probably some people here who feel that way too, that wrestling with this issue of, why can't I just be happy all the time? Why can't we just, sure, we have to fight evil in the world and fight injustice, and we can do that and be heartbroken for the world, but why do we have to be down in the dumps some days, Why does it have to be that way? So there's my answer to the first question. Second question is, what do I think is the strongest point of atheists or agnostics? And I honestly think that for me, the one that I can't really give a concrete answer to all the time, at least, is the issue of the hiddenness of God. If he really does want to make himself known to us, then why does he seem to hide behind this veil of his creation? And if he's hiding behind the veil of his creation, then what is it exactly that he wants us to see? You know, and you know, I must admit that when and like I said, that's less of a straightforwardly. It's less straightforward theologically, and it's certainly not very straightforward philosophically speaking. But I think it definitely reflects probably everybody's attitude here that if there is a God, well, we want to know, right? We want to know. And we want him to show himself to us. Now, I do believe that God has revealed himself to us in many beautiful and distinct ways. But there are some days, there are just some days, particularly days when you're down in the dumps and wrestling with that other doubt, that it just seems like, God, why won't you just come out from behind that sunset? You know, that would mean a lot. So, these are the kinds of things I want us to be open about talking about tonight, and certainly, you know, there should be, we should be responding to each other for sure. But is there anybody else who feels like they want to answer?
Can you repeat the two questions again?
Yes, absolutely.
Succinctly?
Yes. First question is, what is the biggest doubt you have about your own beliefs? Second question is, what do you think is the strongest evidence for the opposing viewpoint?
Thank you.
So tell us your name.
I'm Katie. I'm part of Secular Panthers, and I consider myself to be an atheist. And like Michael said, to be an atheist is simply to be without belief. I don't make an assertion as to whether anyone's God exists or does not exist. And I think my answers to the questions are sort of opposites of each other in that my doubt about my own worldview sort of is what I see as the best argument for your worldview, or what I perceive your worldview to be. And that it's more cultural, it's more social than spiritual, and that what you get out of it, what I see that Christians and other people of faith get out of their faith, is so profound that I can make a place in my life for that and not hurt me or hurt my family or hurt anyone else. And so I think maybe living a life without belief and being open about it, because I think ultimately you can't choose if you believe or you don't. You can live your life in a way that practices a religion or doesn't practice that religion, but you know when you lay your head down at night, you know if you believe or you know if you don't. And I think even if I don't believe it, I could make room in my life to partake as though I do believe, and for not understanding the words, I won't try and use biblical language, but to sort of seek a relationship or to seek a proper biblical Christian life, I could do that without believing it. And so I think that's a downside of being openly atheist and secular, and I think that is a very strong argument towards living a life of faith.
So just to clarify, I guess, so what you're saying is that it's easier it would be easier to live with people as if you did believe instead of just being openly disbelieving.
I think especially in this country, being the majority, it's always easier to operate with the majority, but in this country that majority is the Christian religion. I think there are a lot of good things I could get out of it, a lot of fellowship, a lot of guidance, comfort, all these good things that we talk about with religion. I could reap those benefits with or without the belief. But, and this is sort of veering from the question, but the reason that it's not compelling enough is that it would be a lie to myself to do that, to say, yes, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and read the Bible, sing the songs, wear the dress, do the things, and not feel it. I would be living a lie, and that's why I choose to be openly atheist.
Did you have an answer to the second question?
I think that it's sort of, one is the opposite of the other. I think living a life that, what I perceive your worldview to be, if I were to seek the same things that you seek, the benefits that you get from it, I think that's a very compelling reason to live a life like that. Whoever catches it.
Okay, so my name's Blake Embody. I'm a member of Secular Panthers, and after being Catholic for basically all my life up until I was about 19 or 20 was about where it started to change. I became atheist, and there are still a couple elements of doubt that creep in at times, and to say a couple is actually a bit of an understatement. You know, it seems to be a very natural thing to have. My biggest problem, and I've done so much research on this, and I actually do worry about this a lot more than I probably should. A lot of research has shown that people will have their own worldview, and even when presented with real concrete evidence towards the opposite, the intake of that information only can strengthen their previous worldview even more. So if you're told something, an argument against your viewpoint, oftentimes people, and this goes for any belief system, can do their own set of mental gymnastics to sort of avoid what may be real or may not be real within that argument. So we end up strengthening our viewpoints when in actuality we should be reevaluating them and sort of seeing whether or not those are appropriate beliefs to have. And it's not that people consciously do this. This is sort of just part of being a human, is thinking that to a certain degree you're right, and these people who are telling you you're wrong are actually the ones who are wrong. And I've thought that no matter which belief system I'm ascribed to. And sometimes, and even political viewpoints, I try to look as far into myself to see if these views that I have actually hold up in the face of whatever objectivity I can place on things, and that's a really difficult question, difficult thing to do, as I'm sure everyone else goes through life thinking the same way. So one of the weak points of my viewpoint, as well as others, is the fact that sometimes we just can't think from outside ourselves and really see what what we're pursuing and what we think and what we believe is actually tied to truth. And to your credit, I think this organization, Christi, does a great job of trying to do that through use of cogent arguments, things like that. So I do have respect for that. Yes, absolutely.
Let me ask you though, since you said that part of your doubt is the fact that when people believe something, they tend to believe it more when they hear the opposing viewpoint. What was it that ultimately made you turn around?
I think it was more myself coming to realize things. It was a bit of gentle nudging from a few friends who I would consider, they never thought of it that way, but I would consider a few people in my life to have nudged me a little bit further away from religion. And I thank them for that, because really, and this is one of the other big reasons why I moved towards atheism, I just felt happier. And maybe that's what it's all about at the end of the day. If you can figure out what makes you feel okay without stepping on other people's rights and liberties and abilities for them to do that themselves as well, then I think you've got something really great for yourself no matter what it is. In reference to the second question, it's what the other side does well?
Yes.
Yes.
Strongest evidence from the opposing.
So what Christianity in general, not just apologetics, but Christianity in general does really well for me is a lot of the New Testament teachings, in particular, reach toward not just a spiritual good where you eventually can experience happiness in the afterlife, but a lot of the ways in which you do that good works help this temporal realm to be a lot better of a place as well. There's a scholar named John Dewey who lived in the late 19th, early 20th century, who wrote a book called A Common Faith, and I think it's perfect for this sort of conversation. I've been thinking about it all week. It basically brings non-believers and believers together in what we feel should be something he calls the supernatural. The supernatural is basically what would be a bliss point in temporal society, where there's no war, everyone is striving for the betterment of humanity, and despite disagreements on supernatural affairs, we actually strive towards perfection here on earth for humanity. And that can be environmental, that can be war and peace, that can be a lot of different things. And I feel like that is perfectly consistent with Christianity and many other religious belief systems, and I applaud whenever religion is able to be a motivator in that pursuit.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We'll come back.
So first question is biggest out with yours, and then
Yes.
strongest thing. Okay. So for me, I kind
What's
of,
your name?
my name's Patrick. I'm senior studying finance here, and I think for me, I kind of side with Duran on like the whole happiness aspect, but also one of my biggest doubts is that I get that Christians are kind of like saved by the cross, but at the same time, like I've always kind of got this attitude of wanting to like work towards something, and I understand that with my particular belief being Catholic, like Jesus is death on the cross kind of like sets the scale even as, and then you do kind of perform works as you go on, but there's no like actual way without Jesus to work towards salvation. And so I feel like I want to be able to do that, to like find happiness and work for that, and like say like pose the question Jesus isn't real, so it's like I'm not really necessarily working for that goal. However, I would say it's good that I do work towards that because it betters society as a whole. I think trying to help people and live as a Christian, kind of what she was saying, like it makes you feel good, and it's something like if you do make time for it in your life, it definitely has an impact. So I would say probably my biggest doubt is like the working towards your salvation, like that's not theological, so to speak, in a sense. And like for the atheist's strongest point, I would say this one's tough for me because I think that science and religion do kind of go together. They're kind of two sides of the same coin, but strongest point. I think they have a lot of good points. I'm not saying I don't agree with it. I am saying it's just hard to figure out one because there are a few, and in my life there have been times where like I just didn't really have faith at all, didn't really care, but I was kind of in the back of my mind held on to it. But at that point, man, what did you say the strong point was?
For me,
Yeah.
the hiddenness of God, the fact that he doesn't seem to blatantly reveal himself all the time.
I mean, that sunset could have been a really cloudy day.
Yeah, cloudy days are rough.
I would say that my doubt kind of leads towards that strong point of atheism. So like if he wasn't real, then you're technically just working for the better of society and not really to, as Michael said, get to the theme park in the sky type thing. So yeah, that's fine.
Do you hate the?
Oh yeah, he's been waiting.
Alright.
Dante, a member of the Secular Panthers. One of the biggest, I'm a atheist. One of my biggest doubts about atheism is the fact that we don't necessarily have an answer as to how we got here. I mean, we have science, but I feel like science is more of it tells us how, not necessarily telling us why. And I feel like it's something I definitely struggle with on a daily, like, why are we here, what is our purpose, and after a certain point, in that, I just realized that it's about happiness, and you have to find the things that make you happy. And one of the things that makes me happy is, being around people. I think you find solace in people, and you find, brotherhood and camaraderie with each other. And I think that's one of the major things that makes us human, is our capacity to love each other. And I think that's one thing like a lot of things we struggle with. We may have our differences, but I think if we can love each other, then we can make each other happy. And I would say the strongest point with Christianity, this idea of divine justice, that if you're a good person, you will be rewarded as a good person. If you do harm to people, then if you do harm, you will be punished. I think it does set a sense of morality, but at the same time, I think you don't necessarily need it to be a moral person. I don't want to see people suffer. I don't like bringing about someone else's unhappiness. I don't like bringing about suffering. I think one of the things that makes me happy is helping other people, building bonds with each other, like I was saying previously. So I would say that's one thing. I don't necessarily need religion as a moral compass. I understand what's right and what's wrong, and I would not purposely do harm to anyone. That's about it.
They have to raise their hand. So, I'm Jakai. I'm over Secular Panthers, and what were the two questions?
First question was your biggest doubt about your viewpoint.
Okay, biggest doubt about my viewpoint is, I guess I've already come to terms with what happens when I die. It's like nothingness or whatever for me, and I guess it's a little scary. Thinking about I think about that from time to time, and it's like, just like, how can you figure that? How can you conceptualize nothingness? It's like, Christians have an answer to that. You go to heaven or whatever, and yeah, that's I guess that's my biggest doubt. And the strong, huh?
So you would say that it's scary to think about becoming nothing?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have other doubts too, but that's one of them. The strongest point is the sense of when I was a Christian, I guess 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. Just the sense of togetherness, connectedness, the sense of having a purpose or whatever. It's a really strong point to have. So that it's like going to church and having. Going to events and seeing other people that that sense of community, and if you believe what I believe, and maybe there's already a starting point for us. As myself have never had good. I've never made friends easily, so that was always a good point for me. But yeah, it's my.
Great. Hi, my name is Elisha. I am a recent atheist, something like that. Okay, so my strongest, I feel like the Christian church, or I feel like religion in general, it has the sense of adventure and like this journey, and there's this togetherness, like we're all in the same boat and we're all heading towards the same place, and we're going to try to get as many people on the same boat together at the same time, and it has like a sense of destination, and and that goes down into like the culture, and this like I'm an English major, so I like really love that stuff. But like this romance also comes down into our culture, and then it goes through our art, and then there's like this mystery of the human, and what is, it makes us so much sometimes bigger than what I honestly feel like is for who we are. But it makes, then it talks about God, and God becomes also so much more bigger from that, as a result of that sometimes, and so, but then that is so nice, it's so nice. Like, who doesn't like that? Yeah, and so, I guess that's one of my strongest doubts, because you have, like, as an atheist, you make choices. Like, things become a choice. Like, you decide to be happy, and you decide to love people, and you decide to, try to do what's good for the sake of being good. And that's but, you have that at one end, and then on the other end, there's like this culture, this explosion of rainbows and colors, and this culture, and then you look at my choices, you look at your choices, and you're like, dang, we're kind of like so measly in the face of this thousands of years of this process. You look at it, wow, how measly is that, or how small is that? But okay, so that's probably my biggest doubt. And I think maybe even the second question is, what is the strongest evidence that Christianity has? And I like to answer it maybe in a different way. Is like what science has yet to discover. That's, for me, is like, come on, guys, like researchers, where are you at? Like, let's step it up and let's try to get it. But it's like some of the stuff.
Is there anything in particular?
Yeah. We start rewinding the tapes back in time. We're going back, and then we go to like the singularity, right? And then once you start looking at quantum physics, you have to be like really smart in order for you to like start having a feasible understanding of like where everything is in terms of like how all of that started. For me, it is. I'm maybe just not intelligent enough to understand it, but and there's that point, there's that point. So that's where the physicists at, Come on, let's try to get a handle on that so that it expands my mind beyond where I've come so far. Because I've come to a point where it's like, okay, like I'm comfortable with this, this makes sense for me. But there's this gray point, and there's this gray area that is answered by God and by religion that we haven't had the answers to yet. And I think that's my little thing.
So what you're saying is, why hasn't science yet debunked Christianity to heck yet? Like why are there still things that people can say, God did that? Like why hasn't science
I feel like
those gaps?
Like science has given answers for many things, but there's things that science, even with our strongest observations, sometimes aren't able to answer those kind of questions. It's not something the answers that you can come up with like statistic and data. some things are.
It just seems like science sometimes leads us to a dead end. Or not a dead end, so to speak, but just a road that's not paved yet.
Yeah, it hasn't been paved yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, let's get the monkey to the sky.
So, hello everybody, my name's Colin. This is my first Secular Panthers meeting. Happy to be here. Thank you, Christi, for hosting this. Just real quick on that point. I mean, to be fair, religion has had a few thousand years head start on what modern science is, so it takes, you're talking about 7 billion years. It takes a while to break that down. But anyway, that's a different story. So biggest doubt of mine. I'm not trying to subvert the question here, but I think doubt necessitates belief. And since I lack belief, there is no space for doubt. And maybe I'm being a linguistic pedant here, but that's really what it is. I'm waiting for compelling evidence that I should believe in something, because everything else that I experience and know is based on something that I can quantify through that experience.
I think the second question kind of weighs back in on that to
Sure.
say, what area do you think, is there any area where you think the mounting evidence has mounted up sizably?
Sure. So again, I'm not trying to subvert the question.
No.
I'm going to attempt it. So biggest doubt of mine. I am not entirely sure that this kind of relates to one of your points, that when we physically die, that is the end of the existence of us. Obviously, like there are repercussions of our actions and the relationships that we forge with our life, but generally, like we consider that within a few generations, all of that's dead. Your memory is dead unless you're incredibly significant in terms of society. I'm waiting for the evidence that there is something that manifests after our death, that the energy, that the consciousness, whatever you want to label it, that we are composed of. It was on, we're made of stardust. Okay, well, we'll go back into stardust or whatever. Obviously, we don't have the means to quantify that yet, physicists. But hopefully, at some point we will. That would be fantastic. Not necessarily for any answer other than the fact that something does happen after you die. I mean, other than just energy displacement. So that is the basis of a belief, if that kind of works with the.
Yeah, it works.
Okay. Strongest evidence for Christianity, right?
Or just theism.
Or sure, belief. I was raised Catholic. It's probably 13 or 14 when I really it kind of checked out, but I had to stay until I got confirmed at 15. Because I'm Irish. And so I kind of went through this phase of like sort of delving into like Eastern religion only casually, like in so much as it was convenient to me in my like really privileged American lifestyle, and mysticism and all the kind of granola bullshit that's like pseudoscience, pseudo-mysticism, whatever. Sorry, not bullshit offensively, maybe somebody subscribes to that here, but I haven't found out. And then I felt like a profound lack of purpose, and so I attempted to move back into the spiritual realm and sort of gave Christianity another shot because I knew people who were incredibly convicted that looking at them, they seem to be very morally upright people, and they seem to be incredibly generous and have a greater capacity for love than what I think I was experiencing at the time. That said, we're all human, and the more you spend time getting to know someone, the more evident that becomes. We all are human. And I don't think there is such thing as objective morality, but we can have that discussion later.
Over here.
Michael.
Go to the middle and you'll fight over.
Right out.
It's starting.
So, it's always been sort of a joke to say that, like, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, like,
Tell us your name.
Giovanni. And, so I'm not religious, but, I'm a firm believer in, like, intuition and serendipity and coincidence. And so, that's kind of what I believe in now. And there isn't really any goodness or evil to that. Like, evil coincidences will happen, like karmic coincidences might happen. You could, like, burn down a bunch of buildings and nothing will happen to you, or you could trip someone and you'll end up in jail for whatever. So like that, there isn't really any sort of like cosmic order to what I believe in, but like it's just sort of like magic or spirituality or like some low degree of mysticism, as you're saying, am I right? And so I do think about like the merits of religion a lot, and honestly, like I think a lot of what I don't see why people get so upset when I don't see why Christians or followers of a religion get so upset when people say that it's that the Bible, the New or Old Testament, or any book is allegorical, because allegories still have usage. I mean, you could raise a kid today on Arrested Development, and like he will always leave a note. You will raise a kid that will always leave a note, and that's no different than like raising a kid who will never like listen to a really persuasive, manipulative snake who wants you to eat an apple. I mean, it's funny, but like if you think about it, like there is truth to that. Like allegories, stories, no matter what they are, whether it's like a TV show or like a book that's been around forever, allegories still have like educational value. And so that's the main merit that I see to religion these days, is that you know, yeah, a lot of that seems pre-made up. Like Noah and the ark, I mean, come on. I mean, just, I believed in some pretty crazy shit, but like Noah and the ark, no, I'm not gonna believe in that. But I think there's still like value to these allegories that are you find in religious texts. And so I think it's, I think for a lot of people, the whole world will never end up being like irrational hodgepodge of atheists who just believe in goodness for the sake of goodness. People will need to believe in some fear of hell in order to be good. And so hell is an allegory, but a lot of people believe in it. And without hell, for the most part, the world would just make the world a lot worse than it is. So I think, just to wrap it up, I don't believe in Christianity or any religion, but I think there's a lot of merit to what it has, and I think that it's never going to get to a point where we won't have Christianity. It's always going to be there. So I've learned to accept and learn what value it can provide the world.
All right. Well, first I want to explain.
What's your name?
I'm Daniel, by the way. Major is exercise science. I want to explain that there's a weakness and a doubt of Christianity, and the one weakness that the Bible has caused is division. There is so much division and it's called religion. I do not like religion, and through my study of history, that it has caused passive and aggressive persecution, and it causes separation, and it does not do strength. And so with Christianity, that for me, it's been my major doubt with it is you said that one of the doubt might be the blindness of not showing Christ. It can be, but it can also be a strength. So I can say that it is a doubt of mine, but that doubt has become a strength because it really, in my heart, it actually gives me, what's that word? That gives me a sense of growing. It gives me a sense of is that one word that is stuck in my mind?
Confidence?
Clarity.
Confidence?
Comfort.
No, it's
Cookies. Purpose, maybe?
it gives me an edge. It gives me like a confirmation of, or like an uplifting of, hey, this doubt can become a reality. And like that has always been my struggle as a Christian in general, is the idea of faith. Faith, by definition, explains in Hebrews that Hebrews is the assurance of things not seen. And that is, I think, what we all as Christians struggle with. And atheism and agnostic is faith. This is what it all comes down to. But that doubt shouldn't really bring us down. It should actually bring us up and say, hey, this gives us an opportunity to grow closer, in y'all's view, to a higher power, and in ours, our relationship with Christ, because that is what our faith is. It is a relationship with Him to grow closer. And the blindness, you just think that God is hidden behind this. I don't think He has done that. I think He's always been there, and it's the realization that. Have you ever heard of the prodigal son?
Never sure.
Explanation.
Yeah.
Well, the prodigal son is that there were two fathers.
No, two sons.
Two sons?
Yeah, two sons.
Two sons.
There was two sons.
Two sons and
Yeah,
one
explain.
son.
I know really.
There were two
There were two
sons.
sons.
One son said
One
to the
son
father,
said,
"Give me my inheritance now." And the other son, he stayed at home. But once the younger son said, give me what's mine now. Give me my inheritance now. And he went off to the city and he basically spent it on booze and partying. And then he ran out of money quickly. He became homeless. In fact, it got so bad that he had to work for somebody taking care of their pigs. And he would have to eat the slop that they would give the pigs. And he said, wait a second, what am I doing? You know, I have a father. So he got up, dusted himself off, went back to his father's house, and he said, maybe if I humble myself and I ask my father to at least be one of his servants, he'll take me back. And when his father saw him coming up the hill, he embraced him, and he took his ring off his finger and he put it on his hand, and he celebrated that his son had come home. So that's the story. Yeah, I like that story.
Does anything happen to like the other son?
Yeah, the other son, he's like, are you serious? This guy goes and he spends his inheritance on booze and partying, and when he comes back filthy and disgusting, you throw a party for him. But I've been here this whole time and you've never thrown a party for me. And he's like, yeah, but you're here. This guy was lost and he came back, so I'm celebrating that fact. And that is a metaphor, a parable for, I think you were going somewhere with that, so I don't want to take your point away.
It's that we are far away from Him. In that, if we all desire to find truth and to seek it, and seek it with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, you will find it. You will find Christ. Because it is what Jesus tells us. He says, seek and ye shall find. And I actually think that is actually a great strength of yours. Is the seekness, is the adventure. It is the seekness of y'all are constantly trying to find. You know, like us as Christians, we can get in our comfort zone and be stuck and to be stale. And I know how that feels. Like, so full-heartedly, I know how it feels of being so stale. Sorry. And keep searching. Keep going. And we're in the United States. You know, do this in a laboratory and all of the things, but there's so much more that's not here in the U.S. It is in the entire world. And it's in every single person. It's in everything. God created the earth. You know, God created everyone, and He said, it's good. And He's all in us. I think it's just the realization and the wonder of just softening, humbling into realizing that is just great. And I really respect yours because of the real big conviction of y'all's faith. And that sometimes y'all can have more faith than us, and that y'all just keep going.
Actually, I've got to interrupt you there.
Well, I'm not saying that.
No, it's a fundamental aspect of atheism that we don't have faith.
I know
And so I don't want you to continue with this idea with the wrong assumption. Atheism is a lack of belief. We don't have faith in anything.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
you have a lot of faith in your work to find out new stuff. I don't know.
Willpower.
Not like faith as in like a higher power, but
Determination.
Yeah.
Yeah, determination.
Faith is probably a bad word to try and use in two contexts.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Well, the point is the reason that we're all here tonight is that because everybody here is a seeker. Everybody here is seeking truth, seeking out what is true. So let's pass the monkey on to okay.
Do you want it?
That's fine.
Do you want
Oh, yeah. So what's your name? I'm John, and I don't know if I like saying atheist, agnostic, whatever. I just like to say secular because, well, to me, the question of God, you know, to me, it's not a matter of no, yes, I don't know. It's a matter of, from what I've experienced, that question doesn't really matter. You know, like, it doesn't really matter because life doesn't change either way. It only changes to you. I grew up Southern Baptist, you know, born and raised down in Georgia. I probably was in church until about 18, you know, right when I left high school. I had huge doubt, and I dabbled in a lot of apologetics. You know, I watched the William Lane Craig videos, you know, and I definitely bought all of it, you know, like I was like, oh yeah, you know, this guy, he explains it perfectly, you know, but one thing that all of that never got rid of was the overarching doubt, the like, is there this being here, not only this being God, but this very specific being, this very specific Judeo-Christian God that has a name, has a gender, you know, has actual words written down in the text, you know, like, and actually like had an appearance in the Old Testament, you know. In the New Testament, he was all European and apparently existed through his son, who was also him, you know. So dealing with a lot of the logistics of the theology, I just kind of got rid of it. You know, I was like, it's not a thing, it's not real.
So for you, what's the, I guess, maybe the over complexity of it? Or?
No, it was the fact that it was just like, it's not real. It's not real. The Judeo-Christian God is just not real. I'm sorry, you know, like, it exists like in this book, yeah, but without this book, what is it? You know, like, how is God gonna reveal himself through this book? It was created by a whole bunch of people for a specific reason, you know, over a length of time. And it's just like, you know, but you know, then I dabbled into deism, you know, like I was just like, okay, like God exists, but the Bible's not real, you know, whatever. But then it's just like, okay, so what's the purpose of God then if, you know, we're just here, you know, there's no afterlife, 'cause I just established that that's not real, you know. Like, so then I was just like, yeah, fuck it, doesn't matter, you know. I don't make a question about it. But I do say, like, still the strongest argument that I wouldn't say Christianity, because, you know, like, Christ or Joshua, you know, like, is there evidence for that? And more specifically, evidence for the resurrection, which is pretty much the bread and butter of the Christian faith, you know?
Show me the presentation, like.
No, I I'm curious. But either way, nah, I dismissed them. So, but the strongest argument to me is still like the existence of like all this complexity in life, you know, the teleological argument, you know, like there's intelligence, there's complexity in life. Oh my goodness, where does it all come from? You know? And you know, like 1,000 years ago when rain came down and we didn't know what the fuck chemistry was, you know? Like, it's just like, oh, God made it rain. Oh, God made lightning. God did this, God did that. Until, you know, we sort of evolved intellectually and we got science, and science is like, nah, that's chemistry, bro. You know, like, nah, that's physics, man. Like, oh. So then, like, all of a sudden, you know, like, oh, God is working in these really intricate ways that are too complicated for us to explain. It's just like, really? That's interesting. Or we could just wait another 1,000 years for us to figure out the answer to that thing too, you know?
But I say the biggest doubt about this is, you know, at the end of the day, you never really do know. You know, there's no concrete evidence for atheism, but then again, atheism isn't the one that has to provide evidence. You know, we're sitting here like going, "Hey, you guys, like, we know that's not real. You know, come on, let's bring some real stuff." Like, why does God have an appearance in the Old Testament, and why is his appearance common? Why should we believe in the resurrection? You know, yeah, the Bible has like historical set pieces, I guess, and historical events that happened, you know, but so does Superman. You know, Superman beat up Hitler, and Fidel Castro, you know, like, should we believe that this book, you know, you understand what I'm saying? I know that's a crude, seemingly crude.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But it's not, just, you know, either way, that's my whole thing.
So are you, sorry, I have just a question. So are you saying like that, once we figured out the answer to like rain and like chemistry and stuff, the goalpost removes? Are you saying?
I mean, that was for the other side.
Yeah.
You know, like the other side was like, oh yeah, God didn't know, man, that's chemistry. Oh no, wait, never mind. God created the process. You know, God created evaporation. He made evaporation happen just so all these mechanisms can happen. You know, the intelligent design argument. You know?
Okay. So I have an analogy that I hope will resonate with people on both sides of this issue. Have you all played sardines?
No.
Yes.
No?
Yes.
No?
Wait, this is like the reverse hide and seek game, right?
Well, not exactly reverse, but like you don't. When you find the person, you just hide with them.
That's like reverse hide and seek basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. I think what we're talking about with like the hiddenness of God and the seeking process, I feel like it's pretty similar. I feel like it's as though we're in this massive building and there's this game of sardines going on, and like it's like different faith traditions are supposedly like hiding in different rooms, and like and people out in the hallways are talking about like this. I saw this in this room or that room, and people are trying to decide where's the place they should be hiding. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
This makes
Okay. If anyone has responses.
You're saying it's just a game.
Well, I'm saying it's the.
Or the points don't matter.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Gary.
Did you? Yeah, it was kind of a reply to John.
Yeah.
John's point of like, once you figure it out, you kind of like, I guess it's a move the goalpost, but kind of like, what you want to say, wait a few thousand years or something. But as a Catholic, I know that a lot of the scientific findings have been not, I wouldn't say because of people of faith, but a lot of, I mean, you got a, not Polish, but a Catholic priest founded the Big Bang. And so I feel like the search for religion doesn't just stop once you like, or not search for religion, search for truth doesn't stop when you just don't have an answer, when you think it's just God. I think that it's safe to assume that God is the cause of it, kind of like you were saying, he does all the intricate stuff, but he gives the ability to kind of decipher certain ways. And I don't think that's hindering to the faith at all. Like, whether you believe in faith or not, or have faith or not, it's just an interesting thought.
Does anybody else want to answer the two questions?
I'll answer the two questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm gonna answer the 2 questions.
We're a little short on time now, but
Okay,
we'll
so
get through.
what I want to say first, for me, my strongest doubts when the truth finally sunk, like when I accepted that Jesus did exist, that he was the promised Messiah, that he did die, that he did rise again, that this is it, that he died for me. For me, the biggest challenge was accepting the fact that I need a savior. Like accepting, for me to accept what the Bible says that I am, was for me extremely difficult. You know, God, I think like if you read the Bible, God has a sense of humor, and He says like, you could try your best, like, you know, like the things that you think are beautiful and great and amazing that you do, like your best efforts, they're like dirty tampons to me. Like they're no good. You know what I mean? Like you're not.
What?
That's that's literally what He says. Like you're God. Your good works are as dirt as filthy rags. That's what it's talking about.
Filthy rags. Okay.
Oh, okay.
The word is rags. It's not.
What I'm talking about is what I'm talking about is
Guys, come on.
God says that like your best, or what you think your best is not good enough, not even close. That's what it means. And I'm a, you know, like I take pride in the things that I do. So when I, you know, do a good work or a good deed, and then He says, no, that's not good enough. You need a savior. You need somebody else to do what you cannot do. You know, that's very humbling and also difficult to accept. And also, it sounds like it's too good to be true. Like, why would a perfect, sinless being, you know, do for me what I already think I can do for myself? But like, even more than that, I didn't ask for him to do it. And even if I did, I don't deserve it. So it's like a too good to be true story. So for me, like that's something that I really struggle with. As to the strongest point for the atheist,
Can you answer really quickly?
really quickly before you guys leave. Strongest point for atheists. For me, the strongest point for atheists would be Christians. For me, the strongest defense of atheism is Christianity. Not Christianity like the faith in general, but just Christians. Like the things that specific Christians do. Some Christians, some groups. Like for example, for me, Westboro Baptist Church is like the prime, you know, reason just to be an atheist. I would have,
can agree. I can agree. Okay, yes.
So like for me, if I had not done any of my own research and I would have just if all I had to go by was other Christians, I would be, you know, I would have been presenting for your, you know, for your son, because like, you know, the things that you know, they don't live by the things that they're supposed to. So yeah, so I think the strongest argument for atheism is, you know, Christians.
Okay, is there hang on just a second.
'Cause I wanna.
Is there anybody else who hasn't spoken yet who wants to answer like really fast the 2 questions? Two? Okay. Let's do that real quick and then we'll wrap up. I'll wrap everything up.
All right. Well, I think my answer kind of answers both the questions.
Okay.
But what I think is the best argument for Christianity, or the best rationale, is basically the idea of the afterlife. That after you die, you get to basically spend the rest of eternity with your loved ones. I think that's something a lot of people really value, and I can completely understand why when people are near to death or soon to die, they might convert to any kind of religion. And I think that's also not necessarily an objective weakness, but a weakness in terms of having people having secular ideas, is that there isn't anything supernatural. It's all naturalistic ideas that's involved with atheism and secularism in general, where if you believe you're an atheist, well, you are an atheist. When you die, that's kind of it. Like everything that you could possibly do is going to be in this time frame. And I think that's one of the hardest things to kind of digest, is knowing that. But when it says game over, it really is game over.
Alright, so just like a quick background, I think I can offer something that no one else here can offer. And it seems to me like the majority of you here have were raised with exposure to Western religion. And so the main theme, like the majority of people here tonight seem to have been raised in like a Christian background or like Christian household, or at least with knowledge of the Bible. I, however, was raised with exposure to Eastern religion, specifically Buddhism. And so like that, if you know anything about Buddhism, they don't worship a god, they worship like oneness with the universe. It's some weird stuff. It's like what the hippies do. But so it's pretty weird. My parents, like, they're Buddhist, so I was raised with Buddhism around the house. But my point is that for me, the biggest, I'll go with the reverse order, right? The biggest like evidence that like atheists have is like the fact that I agree with like Duran, what the others have said, like God doesn't reveal himself. And I do find it hard at times because I'm questioning, like, if you want everyone to like be saved, why don't you just reveal yourself? But for the other question, I'd like to disagree with the fact that it seems like a lot of the atheists say that like if you don't believe in God, you will do good, right? Like you were talking about, like people were talking about doing good because it makes them feel good. And I don't believe that. I believe that humans are inherently hedonistic, and like one of my biggest doubts is that if God is not real, then I've missed out on a hedonistic lifestyle where I can do whatever brings me pleasure. And that's kind of cynical, but the thing is, like, without a God in my belief, right, there is no source of morality, and so there's no boundaries to what I can and cannot do. If killing people brings me intense pleasure, there's nothing to stop me from killing people, and the thing is, there's no consequence you can punish me with that. Yeah, you can kill me, but is that going to really result in any like other difference? Like, I'm doomed to die anyways, and so why can't I not just live on Earth and do whatever I want? So my thing is like, it's kind of like a cynical, selfish reasoning, but it's like, if Christ is not real, then I've missed out on an incredibly hedonistic lifestyle. And I'm not saying I want to kill anyone, I'm just saying, like, as an example, if that brings you intense pleasure, there's no consequence you can inflict upon me that would deter me from bringing pleasure to myself. Medical science calls that psychopathy. You are a
Also-
psychopath if you get pleasure from killing people or inflicting pain on others. You have no empathic response, which is a bastardization of chemical balance. It is a profound imbalance.
Is it, or is it just an evolutionary?
No, there's something wrong with your brain.
No, there's something wrong
with your brain.
There's
If
something
you
wrong
know my point, is like,
David, John Wayne Gaben's brain.
my point is like, there's no
Even-
consequence you can inflict upon me that would deter me from this. I'm not saying like
Sure,
killing
you
is
don't
right or
want to die,
wrong.
it's self-preservation. That's, you're talking
No, but the
about
thing is, like-
biology, like self-preservation.
The thing is, like, with the belief that you're gonna die either way, there's no consequence. If I'm gonna die regardless of whether I kill people or not, shouldn't I bring myself pleasure? Right? Not even like, not even killing people.
Wait,
Let's say like
okay.
stealing, right? You can't,
Yeah.
like, because we live in the U.S., right? Torture is banned. You can't just like.
Okay, like,
torture
we
people.
We are not, like I said before, we're not here to debate specific points of view. We really want to just hear people's thoughts and people's hearts on the subject.
Like, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just trying to point out, like, I missed out on an incredibly hedonistic lifestyle where I can bring pleasure to
Actually,
myself.
Jeffrey Dahmer did horrible things. Said he was sorry right before he's dead. Now he's floating up there with the invisible sky daddy. So your point really isn't valid.
Let's all get a beer and talk about this.
Let's get a sidebar.
We need to wrap things up. I just want to say here at the end, as is clear from everybody who's spoken here tonight, all of us have doubts. All of us have things that we struggle with. And I just want to actually confirm something that you said before, is that this idea that doubt, I forget exactly how you phrase it.
Doubt necessitates
belief. Yes. And something that I think is, and I think that we can embrace that too as Christians, to say that doubt is not the opposite of faith. It's an element of faith. It's something that faith and belief is built off of. So if you have doubts tonight, those aren't necessarily bad things. They're starting points for you to continue your journey and your search for truth. And no matter which way you go, I mean, as a Christian, I believe we're all going to find the truth eventually. And I can imagine that from other perspectives as well, that I think that especially as research goes on and as we grow older and live our lives and we come to a better understanding of the world, we will
continually be hopefully appeased of the truth that we find. So my prayer for everybody tonight is that you would still continue to be open-minded, open your heart to other points of view, be willing to listen to other people, be willing to listen to not just what they think, what they feel, and be willing to relate to people on that level, because like I said, we can't afford to live in a world where it's us versus them. We have to clear up misunderstandings, and we have to come to mutual understandings, and also pursue the same good in the world. So, do we want to close with prayer?
We can do that.
Just a